Ever get curious about what makes the internet actually work? What's behind those crazy fast downloads and streaming videos?
Yeah, it's amazing, isn't it?
It really is. So today we're doing a deep dive into a company that plays a huge role in all of that.
Really huge.
Broadcom.
That's the one.
If you're not subscribed yet, hit that button now because this is one story you don't want to miss.
Definitely not.
Broadcom's influence is mind-boggling, wouldn't you say?
Oh, absolutely. They're not just like a tech company. They're practically the architects of, well, the digital world as we know it.
That's a great way to put it. I went through all those reports you sent over on Broadcom. Honestly.
Yeah.
I was blown away.
There's a lot to unpack, yeah.
So before we even get into the nitty-gritty, can you give us a quick overview of what they actually do?
You bet. Think of Broadcom as having two main branches. The first is what they call semiconductor solutions. This is where they design and manufacture the chips that go into pretty much everything.
Everything.
Pretty much. Your smartphone, your smart home gadgets, even the network infrastructure that connects it all.
Okay, so that's the Broadcom inside we sometimes see on devices, right?
Exactly. Now, the second branch is infrastructure software. Here, Broadcom provides essential software for large businesses. Everything from cybersecurity to mainframe computing.
Wow.
They've made some strategic acquisitions in this area.
Ooh, acquisitions. We'll definitely have to talk about that later.
For sure.
But before we get there, one stat from your research really jumped out at me. Apparently 99% of internet traffic relies on at least one Broadcom chip.
Yeah, that's right. It's a staggering figure when you think about it. Every time you send an email, stream a video, or even just browse the web, chances are you're relying on Broadcom technology.
Without even realizing it.
Exactly.
That's kind of like they're the unsung heroes of the internet age, right?
Totally. They're working behind the scenes, to keep everything running smoothly.
And they're smart about how they generate revenue, too. It's not just about selling chips. They've got multiple streams.
Right. Direct sales, licensing their tech, long-term service contracts, and even software subscriptions.
That diversification makes a lot of sense, especially when you consider that the semiconductor market is projected to be worth, get this, over $1 trillion by 2033.
Yeah, I know. We're talking serious growth potential here.
Absolutely. Broadcom is riding the wave of some incredibly powerful trends, but of course, a company is only as good as its leadership.
So true.
So let's shift our focus to the people at the helm. You mentioned some interesting things in your notes about their CEO, Hock Tan.
Oh, yeah. He's a fascinating guy.
He's got this reputation for being super disciplined with money, almost like the Warren Buffett of the tech world.
That's a pretty accurate comparison. He's incredibly focused on profitability and maximizing returns for investors.
Fine.
One of his signature moves has been strategic acquisitions, like, their purchase of VMware.
Oh, right. VMware, a major player in cloud computing.
Huge deal. Definitely made headlines.
I remember reading some concerns, though, about how Broadcom handles these acquisitions.
Oh.
Things like layoffs and price hikes.
Yeah, there have been some criticisms, for sure. I mean, integrating a large company like VMware is never seamless, right?
Right.
Raises questions about whether these, aggressive growth strategies always benefit everyone involved.
It's a tough balance, for sure. But to their credit, Broadcom seems committed to balancing acquisitions with investment in research and development. I was impressed to see they consistently spend over 20% of their revenue on R&D.
It's essential for staying ahead in such a rapidly evolving industry, right? Can't afford to rest on their laurels. They need to constantly innovate to remain competitive.
For sure. And they haven't forgotten their investors either.
Not at all.
You pointed out their strong track record with dividends and stock buybacks. In fact, they've increased dividends for 14 years straight.
That's right. It's a clear signal to investors that, Broadcom is committed to sharing its success.
I like that.
And speaking of success, let's dive into their financial health.
All right. Hit me with the numbers. What's the story here?
Well, the story is overwhelmingly positive. Over the past decade, Broadcom's revenue has, skyrocketed. In 2024 alone, they brought in over $51 billion.
Wow, that's a lot of zeros.
It is.
And what about their profit margins? I'm guessing they're pretty healthy, too.
They're very healthy, especially in their AI semiconductor solutions, which grew a staggering 220% in 2024.
220%.
That's a clear indicator that they're strategically positioned to, capitalize on some of the hottest trends in tech.
Okay, before we move on, I want to remind everyone that we've got links to all the reports and articles we're discussing down in the description.
Check them out.
And while you're there, let us know which stocks you want us to deep dive into next.
We love getting your suggestions, so be sure to leave a comment below.
We do. So they're raking in billions, investing heavily in R&D, and rewarding their investors. Sounds like they have a pretty solid foundation. What about debt? Is that a concern for Broadcom?
They do carry some debt, yeah, but their massive cash flow allows them to manage it effectively and still invest heavily in, growth opportunities. They're not exactly strapped for cash.
Okay, good to know. But let's see what the market thinks. Are investors as bullish on Broadcom as the numbers seem to suggest?
Overall, the market sentiment is very positive. Their stock price has been hitting record highs, and many analysts have, buy ratings on the stock. There's a lot of confidence in their future prospects.
But I'm sure there's some skeptics out there too. Not everyone can be a cheerleader, right?
Yeah.
What are some of the concerns people have raised?
Well, some analysts are cautious about their high valuation. They argue that Broadcom's stock price might be getting ahead of itself. There are also concerns that growth could slow down in some areas outside of AI, which has been a major driver for them recently.
Makes sense. It's always good to consider both sides of the coin. But let's zoom out for a second and look at the bigger picture. Who owns Broadcom? Is it mostly individual investors like you and me? Or are we talking about big institutional players?
It's interesting. A significant chunk of Broadcom shares are held by institutional investors like Vanguard and BlackRock. These are major players with deep pockets, and their involvement signals a strong vote of confidence in Broadcom's future.
That makes sense. Big institutions tend to do their homework before making such large investments. But what about the people actually running the company? Do they have a lot of skin in the game? What's the insider ownership like?
That's where things get a little curious. Insider ownership is actually quite low, only around 1.95%.
It is surprising. It makes you wonder why those who know the company best aren't holding on to more stock. Maybe it's nothing to worry about, but it definitely raises a few questions.
It does, and it highlights the importance of, looking beyond the financials and considering all the factors that might impact a company's success. To get a clearer picture, let's do a SWOT analysis. That'll help us identify Broadcom's strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats.
Okay, I love a good SWOT analysis. It's like a strategic roadmap for understanding a company's overall position. So let's start with the positives. What are Broadcom's core strengths?
Well, their diverse product portfolio is a huge asset. They're not reliant on just one product or market, which gives them resilience in the face of economic fluctuations or industry shifts. They also have a very strong brand reputation, known for quality and reliability.
And let's not forget their size and global reach. I imagine that gives them some serious leverage.
Absolutely. Those economies of scale allow them to negotiate better prices with suppliers and spread their operating costs over a larger revenue base. They can also leverage their global presence to tap into new markets and customer bases.
It sounds like they have a lot going for them. But every company has its weaknesses too. What are some areas where Broadcom might be vulnerable?
One potential weakness is their dependence on a few large clients. If they were to lose one of those key relationships, it could have a significant impact on their revenue. They also need to be cautious about the integration process after their acquisitions. It can be challenging to merge different company cultures and operations smoothly.
And as we mentioned earlier, their debt levels are something to keep an eye on.
Right. While they're managing their debt effectively now, any economic downturn or unexpected expenses could put a strain on their financial stability.
Okay, let's shift gears and look at the future. What are some of the most exciting opportunities on the horizon for Broadcom?
The opportunities are immense. The markets for cloud computing and AI are exploding, and Broadcom is already a leader in both areas. They're also well-positioned to capitalize on the growth of 5G and the Internet of Things. These trends are only going to increase demand for their products and services.
You mentioned emerging markets earlier. Is that an area where Broadcom sees significant growth potential?
Absolutely. As more and more people around the world gain access to technology, the demand for Broadcom's chips and software will continue to rise. Expanding into new markets is a key part of their growth strategy.
It sounds like they're poised for a bright future. But of course, we can't ignore the potential threats. What are some of the challenges Broadcom might face in the years to come?
Well, competition is fierce in the tech world, right? They have rivals constantly trying to catch up and steal market share. And technology evolves at such a rapid pace that what's cutting edge today could be obsolete tomorrow. Broadcom needs to stay ahead of the curve and constantly innovate to maintain its leadership position.
Right, it's like a constant game of chess, trying to outmaneuver your opponents and anticipate the next big move.
Exactly. And we can't forget about the global political and economic landscape. Trade wars, tariffs, economic downturns. These external factors can all impact Broadcom's business.
And what about cybersecurity? I imagine that's a huge concern for a company that plays such a critical role in the digital world.
Absolutely. They're a prime target for hackers and cybercriminals. A single data breach could have, devastating consequences, damaging their reputation and eroding customer trust. They need to invest heavily in cybersecurity measures to protect their data and their customers.
It's clear that Broadcom operates in a complex and constantly evolving environment. They have a lot of strengths, but they also face some significant challenges. What's your overall assessment of their prospects?
I think they're a very strong company with a lot of potential. They've demonstrated their ability to adapt and innovate, and they're well positioned to benefit from some major tech trends. But as with any investment, there are risks to consider. It's important to weigh the potential rewards against the potential downsides before making any decisions.
Solid advice as always. Well, we've covered a lot of ground today, and I know our listeners are eager to hear your final verdict. Is Broadcom a hold or a buy?
That's the million-dollar question. It really depends on your individual investment strategy and risk tolerance. There's no one-size-fits-all answer.
Okay, fair enough. But let's say I'm a listener who's intrigued by Broadcom's growth potential, but also a bit wary of their high valuation. What factors should I be considering?
If you're leaning towards buying, I would pay close attention to their performance in key growth areas like AI and cloud computing. Look for signs that they're continuing to gain market share and innovate in these areas. Also, keep an eye on their debt levels and how they're managing their acquisitions.
So basically, do your due diligence and don't just jump in blindly.
Exactly. This deep dive is meant to provide you with a solid foundation of knowledge about Broadcom, but it's crucial to do your own research and consult with a financial advisor before making any investment decisions.
Great advice. Well, before we wrap things up, I want to remind everyone, subscribe to the channel. We've got more deep dives coming your way, and you don't want to miss out.
Hit that subscribe button and be sure to leave a comment with any stocks you'd like us to explore in future episodes.
We love hearing your suggestions.
And remember, this deep dive is just the beginning. There's always more to learn about any company, and the market is constantly changing. It's crucial to stay informed and adapt your investment strategy accordingly.
Great advice. And don't forget, we've linked to all the reports and articles we discussed in the description below. Be sure to check them out for even more in-depth information.
Yep, all the good stuff's down there.
And just a reminder, this deep dive is for informational purposes only and is not financial advice. Always do your own research and consult with a qualified financial advisor before making any investment decisions.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
That's right. We're here to provide insights and spark your curiosity, but ultimately the decisions are yours to make. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into Broadcom. Until next time, happy investing.